Genesis chapter 12, and we're reading the whole chapter, so verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran. And they set out to go to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abraham passed through the land to the place at Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built there an altar to the Lord, who had appeared to him. From there he moved to the hill country on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord, and called upon the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on, still going toward the Negeb. Now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarai his wife, "I know that you are a woman, beautiful in appearance. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Say you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake." When Abraham entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. And when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And for her sake, he dealt well with Abram. And he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say, 'She is my sister,' so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go." And Pharaoh gave men orders concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had. And Vinny will open that word to us in a moment or two. But before we close in prayer for the service. Yeah.
Thank you, Stan.
Thanks, Vin.
Okay, well, a very good morning to everybody. So nice to see you. One of the things about being a visiting speaker, I think that all you know each other. So I think you're all mates together. But the problem is some of you don't. So if you're a newcomer or visiting like me, do come and say hello, because we don't want you to go out saying, "Nobody spoke to me at that church." Okay. Now, I'd like you to open your Bibles at Genesis chapter 12. And we're going to read about a man called Abram. And Abram is happily married to Sarah. And God intervenes in his life. And he says, Abraham, get out of this place. Get out of Ur of the Chaldees to a land that I will show thee. Well, Abraham, like the Beverly Hillbillies of many years ago, sets off. And he doesn't head for California. He goes to a land where God says, you are now in the land. It was very, very clear. You're here. This is where I want you to be. So stay here. And then the weather changed and there was a famine. And then Abraham thought, I've got to feed all these people. So he went south to a land called Egypt. Now, everything he gets from Egypt causes him trouble. And what I want to do this morning, very simply, is ask the question, what did he get from Egypt? And how did it cause him trouble? So we can learn not to get into such a mess. Okay. Now, throughout the Word of God, we're told constantly that we walk by faith. Okay? So, for example, Hebrews chapter 11 says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. The great apostle Paul said, the life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. And 3 times in the Bible we get the just shall live by faith. Now, what you've got to get about faith, folks, to start with, is that faith must always be in facts. So if you have got faith in something that is not a fact, you have not got an object strong enough for your faith. Ditch it quick. Let me show you what I mean. You're all exercising faith at the moment, sat on your chair, okay? But the strength of your faith in your chair is the quality of the chair. So my dear friend Stan decides to move chair to a chair on this end, and it's made of paper. And Stan sits on the chair made of paper. Stan will hit the carpet by faith. Isn't that right, Stan? That's right. And we'll all know about it. But here's the point. You've got to put your faith in something that can hold you. And some people have faith in faith. It gets very vague. It sounds correct and mysterious, but it's nonsense. Faith must be in facts. So if I said to you after dinner this afternoon, please come back because we're going to do a charity jump from the top of this roof, and I will leap off into a bucket of water, and I'll stand up, and then you can all applaud and give to my charity called the MBP Fund, my back pocket. That'd be very kind of you. But if you've got your head screwed on, you'll say, Vinny, if you leap off this building, you might be heading for that water, but you will not be going home safely. You'll be going home in a box. Because it's nonsense. Now, if I'm stood on the top of Bethel and say, but I really believe I'll be okay, but I believe it, will I be okay? And the answer is no. Because it's not based in facts. So that's why you have faith in God. If a man doesn't like flying, and another man's totally confident they're on the same plane, you will notice they will arrive in Australia at exactly the same time. Because it's not to do with what they feel, it's whether the fella at the front can keep them up and the plane's sufficient. It depends what you've got your trust in. Now God said to Abraham, get out of Ur of the Chaldees to a land that I will show thee. And it says here, verse 4, Abraham departed as the Lord had spoken to him. Lot went with him, and Abraham was 75 years of age when he departed from Haran. And Abraham took Sarah his wife, Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they gathered. Now, a faith that can't be tested cannot be trusted. When somebody tells me I've become a Christian, I'll say, I'll see you in 10 months. Because I want God to test them, to see if they're going to stick it. And here we have this man who's going to be tested. And the test comes by way of the weather. So he's in the right place. Look at verse 7. The Lord appeared to Abraham and said, to your descendants, I will give this land. So he's in the right place. And then it says, verse 10, there was a famine in the land. So the test was this. When the famine strikes and affects the crops, and people begin to fret, how are we going to eat? How are we going to survive? The next question is, what is Abraham going to do? And he's got his brother's son's family. He's got his own family. Not sure how many, but there's quite a number. And they all need to live off the land. So here you see the test. There's a famine in the land, and Abraham went down to Egypt. Now that's where he got into lots of trouble. In the Bible, Egypt is a picture of the world. The world operates on eye, what it sees, what it smells, what it touches. It works on senses. But a Christian walks by faith. Do you remember Jesus when he was going to do an incredible miracle just outside Jerusalem, Bethany? He said, your brother's going to rise again. And Martha said, there's a smell. And Jesus said, did I not say to you, if you believe, you will see? The world reverses that, and it'll say to you, show me your God and I'll believe it. Well, that's a load of nonsense, because there were thousands of people who met Jesus and never became Christians. So he was physically here, wasn't he? And they didn't believe it. Now, the point I'm making to you folks is this, that your faith will always be tested. And this was Abraham's test. How do I feed all these people? Now, if you know your Bibles, God can feed people by turning up ravens. But the test came in the famine. Now, what did he do? He went south to Egypt, to the land of censers. And he reasoned like this. He thought, Sarah, you're quite a good looker, as you say in Liverpool. And when we go down to Egypt, they're going to look at you and see that you're pretty. I mean, Abraham was 75, and let's say she was 5 or 6 years behind him. I mean, she was quite a looker, wouldn't she, at that age? And then what happened was, they said, they're going to take you. So this is what Abraham said. He said, tell them that you're my sister. Now, you are allowed not to vote, okay? The question will be, do you think he told the truth, or do you think he told a lie? You're allowed not to vote, so don't embarrass yourself. Who thinks he told a lie? Who thinks he told the truth? Who thinks? Do you know what? He told half a truth. Because in chapter 20, verse 12 and 13, this is Abraham speaking. And Abraham said, because I surely thought the fear of God is in this place, they will kill me on account of my wife. Indeed, she is truly my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. He said, tell them you're my sister. Here's a question for you. Do you tell the truth? Are you an honest person? Am I? And the Bible says that a godly man swears to his own hurt. In other words, he will tell the truth even if it costs him. Now, I wanted to do that. I heard a story years ago about a man driving a bus. A chap got on it, he paid too much money, or he gave him the money for the fare. And when he sat down, he checked his fare, and he realised he was given £10 too much. So he thought, well, Merseybus is a big company. They won't miss a tenner. But he was a Christian. And so when he came off, he said, sorry, but earlier on when I got on the bus, you gave me £10 too much. Here's your money. the bus driver said, I know. I've been listening to you online. I just wanted to know if you're honest. Now, folks, do you tell the truth? And do you tell the truth when it costs you? Now, be careful when you tell the truth, because you actually could be rude if you're not wise when you tell the truth. Let's say somebody is blessed. Well, you're a bit overweight, aren't you? I mean, that is the truth for some folks. But it's not very loving and kind, is it? So you must have wisdom with telling the truth. And Abraham said, don't say that you're my missus. Say that you're my sister. And the answer was, she was and she wasn't. That's why it was only half a truth. Now, folks, do I tell the truth? And we don't like to tell the truth sometimes, do we? Say, it was me. Up in Southport, where I live, there was a man who loaned me a workshop, and his name, I had to pay him, but his name was Albert. And all these guys live in and around it. One's a French polisher, somebody else is a joiner, somebody else does this, somebody else does that. And it's like a network of small businesses. And I managed to get this little workshop shared with Albert. And they were going to have a big clear out. And so what happened was I thought, oh, great, we're having a big tidy up. And a skip appeared. Now, skips up there are about 150 quid, you know, for a small skip for 2 weeks, aren't they? You know all this when you do a bit of building. And I thought, here's my opportunity. So I tidied up the workshop and I put all my stuff in. And Albert came to see me. He said, somebody's been putting some stuff in this skip. They're not meant to. I said, oh, not me, Albert, not me. He said, well, there was a bag in there saying Preston North End. I said, Albert, I'm terribly sorry, it was me. But I'll tell you what, I didn't want to say it. You see, sometimes you don't want to tell the truth, do you? Because you feel, oh no, I'm found out. And that's exactly what Pharaoh said. Why did you not tell me she was your wife? Get out of here, mate. So my question is, do I tell the truth? Because when he was in Egypt, he started to undermine his testimony by not telling the truth. The second thing that happened to him when he was in Egypt was he became rich. Notice this. It says, verse 16, Pharaoh treated Abraham well for her sake. He had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female servants, female donkeys and camels. Now, because Abraham's brother had died, he felt responsible for Lot. That was his nephew. And when he went into Egypt, he had so much cattle and people. But in Egypt, he got more than he needed. And then when he went north, back to the land he should go to, notice what it says here. Okay? It says, and Abram went up, verse 1 of chapter 13, from Egypt, he and his wife, and all he had, and Lot was with him to the south. And Abram was very rich in livestock, silver and gold. And he went up on his journey from the south as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been in the beginning, between Bethel and Ai. So he went back to the right place. But notice this, everything you get from Egypt causes you problems. Lot also went with him, verse 5. Now the land was not able to support them, that they may dwell together, for the possessions were now so great they could not live together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock, and the Canaanites and Perizzites dwelt in the land. What happened next was this. In Egypt he became rich, and then he went north. And now he was back in the right land. But there was tension in the family. Now here's a question for you. Are you a peacemaker? One of the funniest Irishmen I know is a man called Eric Ford. He lives in County Sligo. He's a big friend of mine. He's an absolute scream. He went to Dublin recently to have his heart sorted out. I said, Eric, how did you go on? He said, I said to the surgeon, blessed are the pacemakers. He's a scream. But, ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you this. Are you a peacemaker? You see, when you're right, it's not enough. Jesus is full of grace and truth. In other words, Jesus is right, but he's also full of grace. So when you come to an issue, gentleness wins. But if you go to a meeting with a tin helmet on, because you think, boy, I'm going to get some bricks flown at me tonight, it's very discouraging. But if you're a peacemaker, you're gentle with people. And sometimes you know the difference between speaking now and waiting before you deliver what you've got to say. And it could be years. But what you try to do is bring peace. Now, the problem for Abraham is now he's rich. There's strife in the family. Lot herdsmen, my herdsmen, tension. We've got too much cattle. The land is too small. And there's fallout in the family. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you deliberately have a plan to bless somebody you don't get on with? Try it. Try it. Don't tell them. Bless them. Send them a present. And you'll find, as you think about them and pray for them, and particularly as you pray for them, it'll bring you into a position where you begin to care for somebody you don't naturally like or you've had a barney with. And the Bible says, blessed are the peacemakers, which is Matthew 6, the Sermon on the Mount. We should be those where we can is make peace. And you're like Jesus who made peace by the blood of his cross. So work on it, folks. If you're in school, you know sometimes in the staff room it's the worst place to be. And you probably don't go in there because you don't want to be in there. But maybe there's somebody who, can you bless them at school? Can you help them? Can you encourage them? Can you thank them for something that they're doing or saying in the school? Because out of the 20 things they may be doing good, you can spot the one they're doing terribly, and it's really bugging you and upsetting you. But try and look at something they do really well and encourage that. Or somebody in your family who maybe you don't get on with. And you know, I know Christmas is only a few months away, but you sit in one side of the table and they're in the other. And you know you're in two different worlds. But can you bless them and help them and care for them? Now you'll have to work that out for yourself because I don't know all the detail. But Abraham was a man who made peace. Now notice how he did it. So this is what he did. Strife, verse 7. And Abraham said to Lot, please let there be no strife between you and me, between my herdsmen and your herdsmen. We are brethren. Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If you take to the left, then I will go to the right. And if you go to the right, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted his eyes. Now notice, he lifted his eyes. Egypt, eyes, sensual. And the whole land was before him. And it says this, he saw the land like the plain of Jordan. It was well watered everywhere before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of the Lord in the land of Egypt. Everything that he got from Egypt was going to cause him a problem. Do you know what happened there? Lot made a decision to go to a place where the land was well watered. In many ways, you can say that's very wise. Abraham gave him the first choice. He didn't say, I'm going here, you're over there, mate. He said, look at it, what do you want? And Lot chose land that was just like Egypt. Now, how do we know? And how did Lot know that it was like Egypt? Answer, he'd just been in Egypt. So when Abraham went to Egypt, what did he do? He encouraged a spirit in another believer, we are brethren, that was to put him on the edge of Sodom and Gomorrah and lead to his destruction. In other words, what I'm telling you this, folks, is live all out for Jesus and let God do the rest. You see, when you became a Christian, God didn't buy 90% of you. In fact, he didn't buy 95. He bought the lot. Just down the road here, there's a man, well, he's sort of a giant when he was a boy. His name was Wayne. £39 million Everton got for him from a man called Sir Alex Ferguson. What was interesting about the deal was this. A week or 2 weeks after Rooney signed for United, Everton played Man United at Old Trafford. Do you think Wayne Rooney ran down the tunnel at Old Trafford with a red top on, blue shorts, blue socks, Everton colours? Do you think he lined up on that side of the pitch or this side where all the other Reds of Old Trafford were? He was on the right side. Listen, Wayne, you're on our side now. Get over here, mate. We have bought you. You belong to us. Over here. Ladies and gentlemen, when you became a Christian, God said, you're mine. You are not your own. You're bought with a price. Therefore, glorify God in your body. In other words, live for me. And when Abraham went to Egypt, he probably did it very innocently, in one sense, because he wanted to feed his people. But he put a worldly spirit in a young believer. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you this, why some, not all, young people don't live for Jesus. Because the parents don't give a good example. Now, they do sometimes, don't get me wrong, you'll find there's a godly family and a wayward kid, and you think, I don't understand this. But the Bible tells us that we're to be examples, loving examples to people. And do you know what that means? That means this, that sometimes I might not do something, not because I can't cope with it, but it might not help another believer. I've got a friend called Barry Davis. One or two of you may know Barry Davis. He's 5'7" wide. He was converted in Burnley, Lancashire, so we called him Barry from Burnley. He went to Belfast Bible College, so he's now Barry from Burnley who went to Belfast Bible College to study the Beatitudes. He's a missionary in Nicaragua. He was a jailbird. He's opened 2 Christian schools in Nicaragua. And he loved boxing. He was in a boxing club at Burnley. He said, my nickname was Picasso. I'm always on the canvas, he said. And he told me about, if you get walloped on your chin here, the vacuum cleaner comes on, he said. Well, you may have had the experience, I don't know. And he said, out you go. When they wallop you and down you go in on the canvas. And he moved to Harrogate for a short time, and he loved his boxing, but he found that all the other young people were coming in, starting boxing. And they were turning up for the boxing and not the prayer meeting. So Barry took a razor blade and put it through his 200-pound gloves. He said, no more, no more. You see, sometimes you've got to, with people, you've got to think, will it do? Is it a good example? You ever think like that? Do you remember when Jesus had to pay his taxes? There was no reason for the king of the universe to pay taxes to puny little Caesar, was there? But what did he say? Pay to Caesar that which is Caesar's, God that which is God's. I'm willing to do it so we don't give an offence. So a man was walking down a ginnel one night, that's a Scotsman, down a little alleyway, and he noticed there was a flashlight coming in the opposite direction. And this other person was drawing near to him, and this flashlight was sort of moving. And when he got close, he realised the man with the flashlight also had a white stick. And he thought, well, this is strange. So he said, excuse me, sir, if you don't mind me asking you a question, are you blind? He said, I've been totally blind from birth. He said, do you realise you're carrying a torch and your torch is on? And he said, that's because, not that I don't want to trip over anything, I don't want anybody to trip over me. Folks, don't trip another believer. That's what he did. And I'll tell you why you know it. Because he goes right to the edge of Sodom and Gomorrah's lot. And then he gets sucked in. And then his children become the enemies of God. The Moabites, the Ammonites, who fight against God down the centuries. The last thing about this was this. God had said to Abraham, from your body. Now, he's 99 years of age. Now, I've got a sister called Angela. She was the one who helped me become a Christian. At 40, the doctor said, first child, she was born beautiful girl. No more, as they said. Well, she was 40 and there was no more. Well, here's Sarah in her 80s. And Abraham's in his 90s. And Abraham said to the Lord, chapter 15, verse 2, what will you give me, seeing I go childless? Remember the promise way back in 12? It was this. From your family, from your people, you will have a line that will bless the nations. So he is in his 90s and he's thinking, biologically, this cannot happen. So God, what's going on? And Abraham said, look, you have given me no offspring. Indeed, one born in my house is my heir. Behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, this one shall not be your heir, but one who will come from your own body. Well, he was a bit stuck, wasn't he? So what did he do? He had a chat to Sarah. Chapter 16. Now Sarah, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, and she had a French maidservant. No, I don't say French. German? No, I don't say German. Egyptian maidservant. Where do you find a good Egyptian when you need one? Answer, Egypt. Everything he got out of Egypt was to cause him a problem. So what happened? Sarah said, lay with her. And he did. And you've just found the trouble in the Middle East. Because the Jew will always be attacked by the Muslim. And that's the line of it. Everything you get out of Egypt will cause this world problems. You see, faith must be in a God that is real. And when you find the God not only to be real, but to work miracles, your Christian life will take off. It's a miracle that Isaac was going to be born. But what he tried to do in the meantime is bodge it up by having his own plan, with his wife involved. One from your own body will bless the nations. In other words, it was a supernatural event. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to try and move you from logic to supernatural. When you know you must trust God, trust God. When I moved to Liverpool for 9 years, I was at the Bridge Chapel. And there was a guy there, you may know him. He owned Budget. And Roy Glover was there, who had a minibus company. And I used to take teams into Ireland through Holyhead and drop these young people off and then bring them back 3 weeks later. And Roy said, Vinny, if you're doing it for the Lord, you can have a minibus whenever you want. So I got this free minibus. Well, we did that for several years. They used to call it the Vinny bus after a while. And then this particular year, I decided I'd just go by myself. I remember I had 40 Irish pounds in my pocket, and I find myself at 2 a.m. on a windy Holyhead harbour, ready to catch a ferry into Dunleary, next to Dublin. So I'm there with 40 Irish pounds, known as poons. And I said to this man who was wearing a diddy jacket, I said, out of these 200 cars here, I said, if I get one of them to take me in and give me a lift, is that above board? He said, Vinny, they've all paid for 5 seats. So if you get in, you're in. I said, thank you very much. Now, where do you find a Christian? Because I remember saying to myself, Vinny, say a prayer. And this is what I prayed. Lord Jesus, I want you to get me across, but I only want a Christian to do it. Somehow a miracle's got to roll up, hasn't it? So I went to knock on, and I saw a little baby in the back. I thought, oh, they're never going to take a stranger if there's a baby in the car. I saw this man, and he's fast asleep with his head against the window, looking like a bulldog chewing a wasp. Fast. And I knocked, and he woke up. I said, excuse me. Now, he must have been a Scotsman, because I said to him, would you like to earn some money? Well, it was bright as a daisy. And I said, do you mind, would you take me across, and I'll give you the money I've got just to get me across? He said, get in. And he put the chair back at the passenger side, and as he flicked it back, he said to me, mind my fishing rods, which were on his back seat. So I put my chorus sheets in, I put my bag in, I put my bits in, and I sat down. And then we started moving and went up onto the ship. And as we were going up the gangplank, he turned to the left and he said to me, are you a Christian? And I said, I am. I said, are you? He said, yes, I'm from a church in Lancaster. I'm going fishing in Southern Ireland. I said, well, I'm going fishing. He didn't quite get it, but never mind. I said, how did you know I was a Christian? He said, well, when you put your chorus sheets in the back, it's ripped, and it says, with Christ in the vessel, you'll smile at the storm. It was on my sheets. Well, we had a coffee, and we went across the Irish Sea, and at 6 a.m, we're in Dunleary, and as we were coming out, he took my £40, and he said, Vinny, your need is greater than mine. Here's your money back. Ladies and gentlemen, you can live at a level that miracles will be supplied if God promises it. But if you want to go through life ordinary, I wish you well. So that area in your life that you think, oh, it'll never work. It'll never be reconciled. I need a job. There's tension between me and somebody else. Get to prayer and say, God. And if you are carrying pain, get on your knees and say, God, you're the great healer. Take this pain away. See what happens. Because it's faith in God that's the secret. And He is here to bless. When you're grown up with 12 children, it was quite interesting. We moved into one house, and this lady thought a children's home was being opened. As all our gang arrived. But I had one brother, he never went to church. But we prayed for him. Some of you prayed. Alan prayed, who I see here this morning, and Dot, his wife. We prayed for him that God would save him. In the night, I'd wake and I'd be, God, please. And he got cancer of the throat, so he didn't have long to live. His name was Lawrence Patrick. And I used to go and visit him up where he lived. And we were praying and praying and praying. And what happened was, I'd go to work in Preston and then I'd drive up to Lancashire where he lived. And I'd spend an hour with him. Some nights he was rolling in agony with cancer. And this particular night, I went into his house. And I'd been told that they'd set this microphone up upstairs so that if you said anything religious to him, everybody heard it downstairs. So I thought, ooh. I went there and he said to me, he was losing his voice, Vinny, where have you been? And I said, well, I've just been at work, Lawrence, and he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I've actually come to tell you how you can make it to heaven. Now, he's 60 years of age. He's worked all his life. He said, I'd like to go to heaven. I said, well, I've come to tell you how you can get there. He said, well, just a minute. There's people not wanting you to say anything. Well, at that point, ding dong, the bell went. It was the Macmillan nurses. And they had to stay downstairs. So I thought, great. And I looked round his bed and I saw these towels and I put them over the microphone. And we went right through the child's prayer to become a Christian. And he said, say it slowly, Vinny, I want to get this. And my brother that night became a real Christian. He said, I see it now, I see it. Within about 2 weeks, he went to glory. Now, I never thought he'd get there. Do you know that person in your family who's so hard, who's dismissive, who you never think will get there? My God can do it. My God can supply your need. Trust him. Don't go off your feelings. Trust him and say, God, do this. You're willing no man should perish. Save my sister. And bang the gates of heaven until he does. And sometimes, folks, I've not trusted him. Not trusted him. I've made a mess and blown it. But the good thing is we can always come back. And remember, you walk by faith. Put your faith in a God who keeps the universe going. And if you're not a believer this morning, see him at the cross, where Jesus hung there publicly for you, spat upon for you, crown of thorns on his head for you, spear through his side for you, hanging there before his mother naked. And then the darkness fell across the world. And in the darkness he said 7 things, but the 4th thing he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? And when them people went to view that sight, as the darkness lifted, they just turned, beat their breasts, the Bible said, and returned. Because it was such a grotesque thing. In the Bradford fire disaster many years ago, I was driving through Yorkshire and I was listening to the news and it said the Bradford fire disaster, and it said something like 79 people died in the fire. And then on Monday they had an expert on the radio and he said, you've been dealing with these bodies, and he said, well, we've found there's just 78, not 79. And he said, what we thought was a human being has turned out to be welded together plastic chairs. When that darkness lifted, what was on that cross was grotesque for you. Are you going to turn away? Say, I don't want you. When the whole of heaven will welcome you, free for nothing. Because he didn't stay on the cross, he rose in the power of an endless life.